no, not even a shred of doubt. I think that's the standard. They can't even be a shred of doubt that he's the guy. Like, they're just going to know it. It's something that when you see it, you'll know it. And I think that's a very high bar to clear, but I think that's what they're looking for. Again, they're not settling at quarterback. They're just not. I mean, when you want to build an elite passing offense, which Jeffrey Lurie, again, I will repeat, he said he is obsessed with doing that. And I think we know that based on how Doug Peterson was kind of called in after running the ball a little too much back in 2019 in the wins over the Packers and the Bills. I just don't think they're going to settle. I think Jalen Hurts has to be kind of lights out, not necessarily, MVP of the league, but they're going to have to look at him and know with 100% confidence that this is the guy. Like, I have no doubts about it.
It is check-in day here on Birds 365. The Philadelphia Eagles will officially check in for the 2021 season down at the NovaCare Complex. We're going to check in with one of our favorites. Joining the show from Bleeding Green Nation is their editor-in-chief, Brandon Lee Gowton. BLG, one of the things the Eagles will undoubtedly do today is when they get their guys in, take measurements. They need the measurables for their players coming in today. After you fill out all your waivers and basically sign your life away to be able to get into the NovaCare Complex, what are going to be the BLG measurements today?
I think I'm checking in at 6'9", like 234, let's say.
234. Is that your top fighting weight, buddy, or are we a couple of pounds heavier or lighter than usual?
That's good for me. That's down. I think my max was like 280, so I'm down. I'm doing good. I'm in the best shape of my life coming into this training camp.
That a boy. I'm just
why
thrilled.
I asked the question.
I'm thrilled I got the BLG.
Yes.
That's what, that's what I'm thrilled about. But, the break, and I don't know what this is going to look like, Brandon, but, when there were a lot of fans at training camp, Brandon's the only guy who didn't have to worry about that because he could just look over everybody. The rest of us got to figure out where the hell to find the spot. Hopefully it's not that crowded, but we'll see when we get down there. I guess we got to talk about Deshaun Watson first, because before we get into camp stuff, noted NFL GM Rusty Hardin spoke yesterday. And while saying, oh, by the way, there's 2 extra women accusing Deshaun Watson, he also said, and I want to quote this directly, he also said teams are ready to jump now if the Texans would trade with them, even while all this is pending. There's no question that numerous teams are still interested. The ball is in the Texans' court. Are the Eagles one of those interested teams? Would they dare go after Deshaun Watson with this caveat? It's not going to be 3 first-round picks. It's not going to be 2 players. It's going to be at a discount price. Would they consider that, Brandon?
I really think they would, because I think it's easy for us to sit here and say there's too much uncertainty, they can't do it, and I get that. And I think that's a reasonable place to be mentally. But I think the thing is, like, if the Texans are willing to deal him and teams are talking to the Texans, I don't think the Eagles just want to be too patient on this and potentially risk missing out on a player that I think they're going to deem a very rare opportunity to acquire a kind of quarterback of his caliber, of his talent, on this age. He's only 25 on the contract and everything. I obviously there are massive concerns and a lot to play out, but I think at some level, I think they're willing to take that risk. We know Jeffrey Lurie wants an elite passing offense. He said that earlier this offseason. And how do you get that? You get an elite quarterback. And I don't think they're going to really be deterred from acquiring an elite quarterback.
All right, if this is the case, and yes, we are on Birds 365 on your website, Bleeding Green Nation, the speculation on Deshaun Watson is absolutely everywhere these days. Philadelphia, a mainstay position, but across the country, across the league, people are talking about how about Deshaun Watson? Could they get Deshaun Watson be made available? What kind of trade is going to be needed for Deshaun Watson? Here in Philadelphia, how can Jalen Hurts be expected to go out and lead this football team with all this speculation ongoing? Because last year when the Eagles drafted a second-round quarterback in the draft, it just crazed Carson Wentz, and it just absolutely kept him from being able to do his job. Are we going with a different set of standards for Jalen Hurts? Because I'd be a hell of a lot more worried if Deshaun Watson was looking over my shoulder rather than Jalen Hurts last year for Carson Wentz. You get the point I'm trying to make here, right, BLG?
Yeah, I think to me though, one of the biggest things about playing quarterback is being able to respond to adversity and like how you handle tough times. And we saw Carson Wentz didn't really do that too well last year, and big reason I think in part why the Eagles moved on from him. I think Jalen Hurts obviously isn't in an ideal situation in terms of not only supporting cast but also these rumors that are out there and the fact that the Eagles seemingly aren't married to him. But look, I mean, that kind of sets him up to thrive if he can like rise up to the challenge and prove them wrong. At that point, then you're like, wow, we have a special one here. This guy, is facing all this adversity and he overcame it. So it's a big opportunity for him as well as a challenge.
By the way, isn't it ironic, guys, that, Russell Wilson wanted out in Seattle, couldn't get it done. Aaron Rodgers obviously wanted out of Green Bay, couldn't get it done. Deshaun Watson hasn't been able to get it done yet. The only guy who could get out was Carson Wentz. It seems like the only way you can really get out in the NFL is to play so poorly that, they'll say, okay, let's get you the hell out. But I do want to bring up, Brandon, because of, a rookie head coach. And you do have these constant whispers. And we're also going to have Zach Ertz at training camp. And the whole plan was obviously that he was going to move on. He was very emotional at the end of last season. If people forget that, the Eagles have been trying to move him, haven't been able to get what they wanted. Doesn't all this ancillary white noise, so to speak, doesn't it make it harder on a rookie head coach who's got enough on his plate? Is Howie doing Nick Sirianni justice, or is he just making his job more difficult?
Well, I think we know about the head coach having to face challenges in Philly with things beyond his control or things that kind of get brought to him by the owner and the GM. So, there's a lot going on here. Sure. You have an unsettled quarterback situation. Like you said, you have the Ertz drama, the Watson thing. There's a lot of things here for Nick Sirianni to manage. But again, that's the big challenge. Like it's kind of, they're throwing a lot at him. They're going to see if he can handle it, just how well he leads this team through all of this. And you're going to find out a lot, I think, about Nick Sirianni. These aren't really excuses for him. I think, it's up to him to prove that he can handle this and he's fit for this job.
All right, real quick follow-up, Jody, before you jump in. If it goes by height and we're back on the field asking questions, so Brandon gets to go first. What's your first question to Nick Sirianni?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, you're the one coming up with a good question, John, as always. You're putting me on the spot here. I didn't have one. I'm totally not prepared. I'm going to say I might still ask.
Hold on. Put it back. If you got it, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I might still ask about Zach Ertz because I still think that's just an interesting dynamic, a weird dynamic that he's here. Obviously he's going to be showing up, but I guess kind of get more into when did that come back together? Because it felt like, things obviously were tense there for a time. So I guess I'm still asking about Zach Ertz here.
Fair enough. And that's funny because my next question to you was going to be about Zach Ertz. You're looking back. I want to look forward instead. He's here. He's showing up. He's going to be taking part in workouts. Where does it go from here? Does Zach just play the good soldier since he's showing up? And some of us are speculating he's showing up just to not get fined. That might not be the case. He might actually not be able to be traded because Howie seems to have a standard that he wants for Ertz. They're now not cap strapped. So, they'd clear some money under the cap. Well, who cares? They're okay under the cap. They're not going to be making any more signings, so that's not a necessity anymore. How is Zach Ertz going to handle his business? We know what happened in the offseason. He's not one of those guys who's going to go to social media and tell you himself. He's going to get whatever information he wants out there, but he hasn't been a major disruptive force. Is this just going to be okay? Is this going to be Zach Ertz becomes one of the Philadelphia Eagles and the story loses heat, or is this going to heat back up again before the season gets underway?
Yeah, obviously, like you said, Zach Ertz is a pro's pro. Although, yeah, I think back to last year, right before the season, when Zach Ertz spoke to the media after that kind of thing where it came out that the Eagles and him, had broken off contract negotiations, and Zach Ertz was pretty honest, not about feeling like not really happy about that. And then we saw him be really honest after the season, basically, really getting emotional and tearing up and saying goodbye to Philly because he thought, he was going to be gone. So I guess from that standard, I'm expecting him to kind of be honest about the situation. And like, this isn't exactly the perfect scenario. I don't expect him to lie to us. Ultimately, I still don't think it's a lock that Zach Ertz is here on the team the entire season. I just think you look at that $8 million they can save. It's not about just this year, obviously, that you can roll over to next year. And I also think you just need to see what Dallas Goedert can be as the number one volume tight end before you're committing to him long term. Obviously, his contract is up after this year. So I just feel like it still makes too much sense for Zach Ertz to not be on this roster ultimately, but he's here. So we'll see.
Yeah. And there's a domino effect, as you mentioned, not only with Dallas Goedert, Brandon, but you think about what Nick Sirianni wants to do, and he wants to play more 11 personnel. He wants to get receivers on the field. He talks about competition. That's sort of his foundational ethos, or whatever you want to call it. How do you go into your locker room and say, look, Devontae Smith, is going to be on the field, Jalen Reagor, but you're going to say Zach Ertz. You want to play 11, but you might have to play 12 because it's going to be tough to sell his locker room. Travis Fulgham or Greg Ward or whomever is better than Zach Ertz. So I go again back to Howie making things more difficult for Nick Sirianni. He might be because Doug Peterson wanted to play 11 personnel, but he couldn't because his receivers stunk and his tight ends are good. Is Nick going to be in that same boat? Is he going to look like a hypocrite with the competition thing?
I hope we don't see as much 12 personnel as the Eagles used in recent years because it was not very good. Yeah. It was not very aesthetically pleasing, and it wasn't successful. It'll be interesting to see, right, in camp. That's something we'll be out there watching on the practice field. How much 12 personnel are they running? Like, what are the rotations looking like? Is Zach Ertz running with the first team fully, or is it Dallas Goedert getting a lot of more work there? That's going to be very, very interesting to watch. It's strange. It's strange that Zach Ertz is here. It really is. I think that obviously he wanted to move on. I think him coming back made the most sense for him at this point because, he's not going to get the money he's getting right now anywhere else, clearly. So it makes sense for him to show up. From the Eagles' perspective, it doesn't make as much sense for them. So, yeah, it's another challenge that Howie Roseman is throwing Nick Sirianni's way, but I guess he's going to just try to make the most of it in the meantime.
The one guy I actually feel badly for is Richard Rodgers because I think he re-signed here because he thought he was going to be the tight end 2. Now he's the tight end 3. You got Johnny Mack and Brandon Lee talking down to 12 sets. He's never going to get on the field. Rodgers never going to see the light of day. That poor guy is screwed. But I digress. Let's move it over to the other side of the ball. Eagles got Steven Nelson signed this week, BLG. Only a name that's been kicking around for 4 or 5 months here. When are we going to sign Steven Nelson? When are they going to get we got to have a second quarterback. It's got to be Steven Nelson. He's the best available one. Well, they got it done. Not as quickly as Eagle fans would like, but Howie Roseman got it done at probably the price he wanted. Checking all the other salaries of starting quarterbacks in the league, similar resumes to Steven Nelson. Did Howie do a good job by being patient, getting the guy he wanted before camp opened up, which is the main key? Yeah, he missed those all-important competitions that Nick Siri had in the optional workouts the Eagles had. Something tells me he'll be just fine that he missed those. Did Howie do a good job with his patience in landing Nelson?
I think he did. I think this is a really sensible addition. Obviously, everyone was calling for it. I think the Steven Nelson situation was interesting because it's not like I don't think the Steelers cut him because they thought, he was this terrible player and they had to move on. It was obviously there was cap implications there. I think Steven Nelson, wanted more money. And I think in free agency, why it took him so long to sign, a lot of people are always like, oh, why was he on the market if he's so good? Well, I think in his case, he had an especially unrealistic expectation of what kind of caliber player he is and what he deserves. So And that cost him money because he probably turned down deals that were potentially more lucrative than the one he ultimately got with the Eagles. But he was kind of waiting for a bigger one to come, and it didn't. So he ultimately had to bite the bullet and take what the Eagles gave him. So on that sense, the Eagles kind of were smart to wait it out and I think get him at a reasonable price. And I think it's a good signing. I think it kind of reminds me of the Anthony Harris deal. It's like this is a guy who played at a pretty good level in years past, but didn't have his best season last year. So you're signing him to a one-year deal. He fills a short-term need. And if he plays well here, then maybe he can be a long-term player for you.
And it's not just Harris and Nelson. You look at it, they're probably more accomplished than the Eric Wilsons of the world. Certainly not Ryan Kerrigan would be in that boat. He's very accomplished, but on the back end of his career. Then you have the contract guys, Derek. So you have Derek Barnett, you have Josh Sweat, you have Avonte Maddox. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody, but there's a lot of guys who are going to play that are essentially on 1 year prove-it deals. Now, for Barnett and Sweat and Maddox, it's about their contract year, but still, it's the same theme. They have to go out there and prove it. You think that's good or bad when you have guys who are sort of lame ducks and playing for their next contract?
I mean, I think it's good in the sense that, obviously it's bad in the sense that you'd rather just have your core pieces locked up. It's good in the sense of where the Eagles are. I think, Jeffrey Lurie used the phrase real transition year. I mean, this is part of that. Like they're finding out who their next core is. They don't have all those pieces yet, in part because the roster has kind of been mismanaged to some extent, and they haven't found all these young studs to build around. But there's a lot of prove it emphasis with those guys that you mentioned, which kind of makes an interesting dynamic this year. In theory, guys who are hungry, a lot to prove. They're going to be playing hard. They're not checking out. It's not like they've already been paid. But at the same time, like, you haven't signed some of those players yet because you don't feel great about them necessarily and giving them that big money. So there's a lot to figure out here. I think there's, it's not going to work out where all these guys are probably, long-term pieces, but they might find a couple. And I guess that's a win.
BLG, you'll probably get from the Eagles either today or tomorrow or soon enough their first depth charts. We can all have depth charts. I got an Eagles depth chart sitting here on the side of my desk. Now, that's just my opinion as to how I would line them up. You have yours, Johnny has his. The Eagles is kind of the most important one because it's their team. How much do you look forward to getting that first depth chart, comparing it to what you think, debating it on your website? We'll debate it here on Birds 365. That is one of the fun things about camp because you get your first official impression from the team you're going to be covering all year, right?
Well, it's always fun because when the depth chart comes out, all the media reporters, I feel like we all tweet out, this isn't the official team depth chart. This is the PR department putting it together. I guess to me, the fun of it is seeing like the depth chart that we see in practices, and figuring out like who's running with which units, how often. Especially like some of the offensive line stuff is interesting to see, like who's getting this first rep, especially if someone's missing practice for some reason. So that's the kind of the real interesting stuff, I think, to get into the lineup notes that we'll be all tweeting out and writing about coming up here in the next few weeks. So that's the good stuff to me, kind of figuring out how this team is shaping up exactly. And obviously that gets reflected in all the 53-man roster projections that we'll be doing. And I'll have one up on Bleeding Green Nation today and be updating that throughout training camp practices after the preseason games. All of that is always fun to me. It's kind of like, it's like mock draft season, but I think better.
Left tackle is probably the most obvious competition, real true competition with Jordan Mailata and Andre Dillard. After that, what are you most looking forward to look? Third receiver, have slot corner, a lot of options there, and that Nelson's going to be on the outside. What other position are you most looking forward to get a little bit of clarity in where they're going to go?
Definitely the receiver position and the rotations there, because we already talked about like the 12 personnel, the Zach Ertz of it all. Putting that aside, early in spring and the spring OTAs that we saw, which is very limited practice watching, probably about 30 minutes total, maybe, or an hour. We saw Greg Ward running with the first team. And I think Greg Ward is a nice player. He can actually catch the
Jody's going to get upset.
You guys keep putting Greg Ward in the box. All he's going to do is lead the Eagles in receptions again this year. And you're all going to have to eat crow. But go ahead, do it again.
I'm just saying he's not dynamic, Jody. Like the Eagles need. Look, I'm not saying Greg Ward never belongs on the field, but he cannot be starting. He cannot be your full time one of your top 3 wide receivers. He can't be. Travis Fulgham, I know, is not without issues, but has too much talent for him to be totally behind Greg Ward on the depth chart. And I would like to see, maybe not right away. I think it's okay to have Greg Ward starting out camp and kind of make Travis Fulgham earn that job. But by the end of camp, I would like to see Travis Fulgham like playing well and earning a starting role and not seeing as much Greg Ward. I'm sorry, Jody.
That's okay. I'm just gonna sit back and watch him lead the Eagles in receptions again this year.
Come on, you got your other guy here. Devontae Smith is going to lead them in receptions. Come on.
We'll see about that. Now, Devontae Smith's going to lead them in yards. He's going to lead them in touchdowns.
No,
but actual numbers I'm telling you, Greg Ward is one of the best 4-yard receivers in the National Football League. You guys don't give him enough credit for that. All right. Speaking of competition, I will play Nick Sirianni here for a minute. Competition between guys like, I don't know, maybe John McMullen and Brandon Lee Gowton. The Eagles, like I believe every other team in the National Football League, is going to have some kind of way of denoting which of their players is vaccinated and which of their players isn't vaccinated. It seems like most teams are going to go with colored wristbands. That one color would mean that player has had his vaccine, the other hasn't. Who's going to be in charge of keeping track? Are you going to be competing against each other with your notebook? Oh, there's a yellow. There's a red. There's a yellow. Let me do some math here. See how they're actually going. Is there going to be competition between you reporters as to how many guys are or aren't vaccinated on the Philadelphia Eagles?
That's going to be tracked. I can guarantee you. I don't know by who. I don't know if by me. We'll see what the exact layout is and dynamic and viewing capabilities are. There's a lot of players to keep track of. But obviously, if it's only a few who have a certain color and there are suspicions there, then that's absolutely going to be noted and it's absolutely relevant. Because, I mean, let's say, just for example, you have, 2 players at a starting position and both of them have a certain bracelet on and they're both unvaccinated. Well, that's pretty, something to note because there's a situation where those players from that same position room are both out for a game all of a sudden. And then you're starting 2 backups. Let's just say, again, like just picking a position like cornerback, like that's absolutely relevant, I think, football-wise to note.
Just a hunch, but the Eagles are too secretive. I don't think they're going to go the wristband route, but we'll see. I hope they do. I hope we are able to tell, but man, they are secretive. I think they're going to figure out a different way. But that's just the sense that I get. I want to round back to wide receiver real quick because one name we didn't mention, and it's almost August. What is it today? July 27th. Mr. August is JJ Arcega-Whiteside. Dare I bring up that name, Brandon? Is there an opportunity? New coaching staff, they don't know JJ's history. Is there an opportunity he shows up in August again and goes, that guy looks pretty good, and he's part of that equation for that third receiver?
So did a roster projection with, Jimmy Kempski here of Philly Voice for BGN Radio last week. And Jimmy had JJ Arcega-Whiteside making the team as his 6th receiver. And I can see it from the standpoint of maybe how he just keeps him around, but I can't see it from the standpoint, as you're kind of alluding to there, John, like what are we going to learn about JJ Arcega-Whiteside this summer that we haven't seen in a training camp prior? Because I think he did some good things as a rookie. I think it looked like he turned a corner last year, not only on the field, but mentally too. Talking to the media, it seemed like, oh, wow, this is like a player with a lot of confidence right now. He's feeling good. Maybe we'll see something in year 2. And we didn't. So I don't know what he could possibly do this summer to make me feel like it's actually going to translate to the regular season. But they might just keep him anyway.
BLG, I'm going to give you a hypothetical. The Eagles make a deal for Deshaun Watson. Whatever the cost is, X amount of first round picks, players included. And one of those players is Jalen Hurts, who is a Texan, born and bred. And maybe they take him back either to compete for their starting job or they hand him the starting job. They've got Tyrod Taylor, who can start for them. They drafted David Mills. I don't even know if he's in the deal, but for argument's sake, he's in the deal. They want him as part of the package, which means Deshaun Watson comes here and we find out Deshaun Watson's going to be suspended. He's either going to go on the commissioner's list or he's actually bad news comes out. He's going to be suspended for a lengthy period of time, whatever it is, minimum 6 games, maybe 12, maybe an entire season. Which are you more excited to see? The Joe Flacco-led Eagles or the Nick Mullen-led Eagles? If the deal comes down, Hurts is gone. Yes, they've got a new starting quarterback, but he's suspended. Which of the 2 QBs do you want leading the 2021 Eagles?
I think having to watch is he 37 now, 36-year-old Joe Flacco quarterback the Eagles at this point, I just might have to stop covering the Eagles at that point. I don't know if I can handle that. Again, just talking about
You'll
the
become an
aesthetics
Eagle
of that.
reporter via Zoom? Is that what you're telling us? You'll just stay home for the entire season?
I'm just going to check out. I'm not covering the team anymore. I think if that happens, I don't know what we can possibly learn about the Eagles or enjoy about this, again, just from an aesthetic standpoint of watching the game if Joe Flacco is playing. I don't know what he has to offer. That is honestly, so I did a thing for Bleeding Green Nation this offseason about what are some of the worst case scenarios or one of the things to kind of really be concerned about this season. And it's that Joe Flacco plays any kind of meaningful amount of time other than a game or two. I just don't know what we're learning about that. I don't know what the best thing that could realistically happen from that is. I don't want to see it.
All right, last one for me, Brandon. You brought it up. Worst case scenario, best case scenario. Give me both for this team.
So I think it's weird to say that it's not necessarily this team bottoming out, because I think there's a scenario where this team bottoms out. They get a really good draft pick of their own in addition to the third they have. Maybe Howie Roseman, they move on from him. That sounds impossible, but maybe. And they kind of start afresh. And I think that's might be what this organization needs in the long run. So I don't know that that's the worst case scenario. I think the worst case scenario could be something where you're 8-9, 9-8, and the season kind of becomes something of a false positive. Jalen Hurts, maybe he's just kind of mediocre and you stick with him because you feel like there might be a little bit more there, but it ends up being that's all he has. And you kind of, you're kind of stuck. I think the best case scenario is they kind of obviously Jalen Hurts has a really good season and they win, let's say something like 10-7, and then they're in the playoffs. Maybe they don't win a game, but everyone's feeling really good about Jalen Hurts, and you feel like you can kind of build around him, and you don't even have to trade for Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers or whoever else is out there next offseason. So I don't know how likely that is because I think Hurts has a big gap to bridge from going from arguably one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL to suddenly a top 10 kind of player. But I think he deserves a chance, so we'll see.
All right. And when he gets that chance, my last question is going to be about the quarterback too. What does he have to do? How are you going to judge? The Eagles are going to make their judgment, but we all sit in judgment when it comes to the Eagles. Are you basing it on completion percentage? Is it touchdown to interception ratio? Is it quarterback rating? Is it W's and L's? There's a lot of things that you can put into it. Give me a kind of order to them, or put the one on the top of the list above all else where you say, yes, he deserves to be the Eagles quarterback in 2022 because no Deshaun Watson, no high draft pick. We're going right back to work with our guy, Jalen Hurts, because he accomplished this. What's he need to accomplish?
I think there are a number of things you could say in terms of wins, playoffs, having, the teammates really buy into him, which I think will happen, just given how magnetic of a personality Jalen Hurts is. But to me, the Eagles standard is going to be not even a shred of doubt. I think that's the standard. There can't even be a shred of doubt that he's the guy. They're just going to know it. It's something that when you see it, you'll know it. And I think that's a very high bar to clear, but I think that's what they're looking for. Again, they're not settling at quarterback. They're just not. I mean, when you want to build an elite passing offense, which Jeffrey Lurie, again, I will repeat, he said he is obsessed with doing that. And I think we know that based on how Doug Peterson was kind of called in after running the ball a little too much back in 2019 in the wins over the Packers and the Bills. I just don't think they're going to settle. I think Jalen Hurts has to be kind of lights out, not necessarily, MVP of the league, but they're going to have to look at him and know with 100% confidence that this is the guy. I have no doubts about it.
You mean the no shred of doubt, the 100% confidence they had when they gave Carson Wentz the contract that they gave him? Is that the standard we're talking about here?
I mean, it is, but
still go back to Carter. I like it. I've said the same thing, Brandon. I think Jalen has a very, very small path. You just said it better. I might steal that from you. There has to be no doubts. And I don't think that's necessarily fair for Jalen Hurts. I don't think it's possible for Jalen Hurts. More than that, I've been saying that pretty consistently. Might not be Deshaun Watson, might be a top 10 pick in the draft, but you're right. They're not settling at quarterback. It's going to be really difficult for Jalen Hurts, unfortunately.
It is. It goes back to kind of what I said earlier, though, in terms of like the challenge. Like if he can kind of rise against this unfair expectation, this not ideal supporting cast, then you know you have a special one, and then that is someone to build around. So again, it's like a double sided sword here. It's like there's opportunity and there's a challenge, and I think I would not doubt him. Like I give him a chance in my mind mentally. I don't think it's likely that he's going to be the Eagles franchise quarterback, but again, I think there is a non-zero chance that he could forge this path and really prove everyone wrong. But again, I think the Eagles are more likely to move on from him when they can find that option, whether it's Watson or whoever.
6'8" Jordan Mailata is going to have to get up on his toes to look Brandon Lee Gowton in the eye tomorrow. BLG, feel free to get out, run a couple laps around the block, see if you can get down under that 238 that you mentioned. Always a pleasure, my friend. And I said this yesterday. Do me a favor. When you see McMullen down there on the grass, don't hit him, because he's got a shoulder thing. He keeps whining about it during the breaks. I can't afford to have him on the IL. I can't afford to have him on the pup list. If you do the fist bump thing, fine, but no bro hugs. Don't hurt my guy. I need him, okay?
We're still in the pandemic. You're not allowed to do that, Jody. Don't worry.
Yeah. Maybe I'll hook him up with like a sports science smoothie or something to get
it hurts when he goes like this. He can't even do this right now, Brandon. That's how bad his shoulder is. BLG, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Bleeding Green Nation, his website, editor-in-chief Brandon Lee Gowton, our guest here on Birds 365. All right, coming back. We still got plenty to do. I was informed that Ed Kratz is going to join us, our favorite guest, our most often appearing guest. Brandon's trying to come up on the outside, but he's got links
Got a ways to go.
Because Eddie is he's not to double digits yet, but he's getting close. Damn. We get that Kratz guy on all the time. Ed Kratz, John's cohort from Sports Illustrated, gonna hop aboard here in hour number 2. He's McMullen, I'm McDonald. We're your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.